All right, we're going to do a quick sound test. Test 1, 2, 3.
Sorry about that. I had to switch over again. I'm not quite sure why my computer does that to me, but it moves me over from one to another. So I am here. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the new year. And
is Mr. Green on, Mr. Fedorcha?
Pardon?
I don't see Mr. Green yet.
Well, okay. Well, I'm not going to open yet until we.
Okay, I think it's just him then.
Yeah. Wait.
Did I miss him, Mr. Green?
Also, then. Pardon?
He did pop up, but it looked like he dropped off again.
Okay.
That's okay. I'm waiting. I will wait to hear from you. And also, Eric, then you will, you're okay, and you'll let me know if there's anything I need to know as we go along. Very good.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then, because so I would like to now open the Northern Lehigh School Board meeting to order. Welcome everyone again, and this meeting, as always lately, is being recorded. The recording will be posted on the Northern Lehigh School District Media YouTube channel. All votes this evening will be roll call votes. And a reminder to board members that please state your name before you first or second a motion so that the secretary can get the proper names. With that in mind, I'm looking at my agenda here, and I apologize because the all financial matters shall be roll call, but we're doing roll call for everything, so that's not an important factor. So if we now can stand for the pledge to the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Secretary, roll call, please.
Sure. Mr. Disler?
Here.
Mr. Green?
Here.
Ms. Heckman?
Here.
Ms. Hvac? Here. Mr. Keegan?
Here.
Mr. Kern?
Here.
Ms. Culp?
Here.
Ms. Martineau?
Here.
Mr. Fedorcha?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. As always, public comments is restricted to the items on the agenda as they appear. Anything that is coming from the public that is not on the agenda and they wish to address the board, I will recognize you at the end of the meeting. I would now accept a motion to approve the reorganization minutes as well as the regular minutes of the December 1st, 2020 meeting. Do I have a motion to do so?
Bob Keegan, so moves.
Robin Dessler, so moved. Second.
Okay. Any questions? Any comments, questions, or changes? Seeing none? Roll call, please.
Mr. Dissler,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Ms. Heckman,
Yes.
Ms. Hvac, yes, Mr. Keegan,
Yes.
Mr. Kern,
Yes.
Ms. Culp,
Yes.
Ms. Martineau,
Yes.
Mr. Fedorcha.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. Carbon Lehigh Intermediate Unit, again, Mrs. Hvac.
Sure, not too much to go over. We did have our December meeting. It was a little unique. Normally we have a dinner ceremony and have some of the students come and put on a presentation. This year, the Carbon Lehigh Intermediate Unit put a Zoom video together with that same type of thought. The kids still enjoyed it. It was a really awesome program. It is posted on the website for cliu.org. I'd recommend going out, taking a look at it. It is really a really great recording from our students all across the Carbon Lehigh area. We will continue to have the same number of board members in the future for the IU, so we will see that come across for voting purposes and to our own district. So we will still need a representative to continue to be on that board. As of right now, I am still the current person. If anybody's interested, you're always welcome. But I will stay on for that as well. And again, our budget will be coming due here in the next few month meetings. I believe maybe March, April timeframe. No increase to the district, as I had mentioned before, but they just re-went over it and mentioned it again. So just wanted to bring that up to our board. And that's all I have this evening, Mr. Fedorcha. Thank you.
Okay, any questions from Mrs. Hvac? Okay. Lehigh Career and Technical Institute, we had our December meeting. Of course, it was different again than our normal dinner meeting that we usually have for reorganization. We did have a reorganization, and I'm happy to say that myself and has been reelected as chairman, and that David Heim, who is from Parkland, is reelected as our vice chair. We did begin our negotiations. I'm sorry. We did begin our budget, and as we will have that prepared to bring to this board in the next month. Basically, we're still in a hybrid situation, and we're still moving on, and we're just going to have to see with how things go for right now, because at this point, even with our board being 21 members plus all the administrators, I don't see us coming back unless we really open up beyond the 25 limit. So that's where we are right now. I'll accept any questions if you have them. Okay, we'll move on. Mrs. Heckman, legislative?
Thank you, Mr. Fedorcha. There's nothing to report at the state level. No bills relating to education have been passed recently. And I decided that I'm not going to report on any monies that may be flowing down from the second stimulus package or any COVID relief bills, since they're typically covered in more detail in other parts of our public school board meetings. Normally the information is best shared when Dr. Stoker or Superintendent Link can detail exactly how much we're getting specifically versus what education is allotted, from the 30,000 foot view. So I don't really have anything to report right now. Nothing has happened yet. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Heckman. Mr. Green, LTIC.
We had a pretty good month, to be very honest with you. And first of all, we also approved our budget at our Thursday night meeting. You may have gotten a copy of that already. I'm not sure if they were sent out or not. I would hope for approval of that next month. Northern Lehigh is getting a couple dollar decrease, not significant, but it's a decrease. Of a more significant nature, I would just like to report, and I think one of these was in the morning call, the other one wasn't, but we had not one, but two people recently give $1 million donations to the college. The first one was a gentleman named Cliff Miller, who was one of our first professors of technology. And his $1 million donation will be used for technology scholarships, ironically. The second person was a gentleman named Nevin Rameli, a former American airline pilot. He's from Lehigh, and his donation will be used for aviation scholarships. Nevin originally was going to donate $500,000. He came to campus one day, and some people showed him around and introduced him to some areas. And he was so excited. He said, "I'm going to double my donation, and I'm going to give you $1 million." So it was like, oh, we should have more dinners like that, you know. So that worked out pretty well. So not one, but $2 million contributions. The third thing, and I'm not allowed to mention who the company is because they want to control their own publicity. And they started a pilot program with us several months ago. They had 30 people in the first program. The people all went through it, was successful. Then they brought back 30 more and then 30 more. And I think we've had 4 classes of 30 now who've gone through. We're anticipating that will increase to probably 2 rotating classes at all times. Very good program for the college. It's one that we make some excess profit on. We've also gotten some wonderful equipment from them that we could use for other classes. And it's our understanding that this company now, who's a nationwide company, has picked 2 schools nationwide to do their phase 2 training program, and L-Tri-C has been picked as one of those. So again, a very good program. And I can't mention what name it is, although we did talk publicly at our meeting on Wednesday night. It's just a big old swish, and we really can't talk about it. And that's all I can say. So a good month for the college in a whole bunch of ways. Questions?
Any questions for Mr. Green? And don't ask him about who it was, though.
No, it's just a big swish. We can't tell you who it is. So
Thank you, Mr. Green. But that is really encouraging, and that's wonderful. That's really a great thing that's going to happen to our community college. Certainly going to help our students. Okay, moving on then. We did have in your packets, we have the committee reports as well as the minutes of the meetings that we hold monthly, which also includes the extracurricular curriculum committee. So those are in your packets, and we shall move on then to our student report. Mrs. Craddock or Mr. Williams, I don't know who's going first.
Hi, everyone. So to start off my report, for the first time, Northern Lehigh has had an Artist of the Month, which is Kiana Dyer. Her artwork can be seen in the most recent edition of our news slate. So congrats to her. National Honor Society will host their induction ceremony this week to welcome new members and officers. New members include Aisha Salih, Gabriel Diaz, Brittany Dow, Daniel Dougherty, Emily Hunsaker, Caitlin Kirk, Brianna Coons, Cameron Coons, Sophia Lear, Ryan Lynch, Kaylin Mack, Madeline Mack, and Abigail Williams. This year's officers are Bradley Griffith as president, Kendall Heine as vice president, Aiden Williams as secretary, Owen Levan Euler as treasurer, and Nia Nicholson as historian. Keystone exams will be rescheduled to be January 19th through the 25th. And now I will pass it off to Aiden.
Thank you so much, Paige. So the Northern Lehigh Band and Choir released their virtual holiday concert just before the winter break. This year, not only the high school band and choir were included, but also the middle school and Slatington Elementary bands and choirs participated. The spring musical this year will be Nonsense. It is a musical comedy about nuns who need to raise money. It will be a virtual play, just like the fall play this past semester. and it will be also available on the Northern Lehigh website. As for sports, winter sports will be able to begin on the 16th of this month, and sports games will also then be able to start at the end of the month, with the first two matches being the wrestling team will be able to play Notre Dame on the 20th, and on the 21st, both the boys and girls basketball teams will be playing Catasauqua. And that concludes our report for tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, both of you. Are there any questions for our students? Okay, again, thank you very much. We shall move on. To our business managers reports.
Good evening, everyone. You should have all received by delivery from Mr. Utch your single audit report. If anyone has any questions, please reach out to Sherry or myself, and it will be on February's board meeting for approval. Sherry?
And at the end of every year, we have to post on the Municipal Securities Rulemaking Board. We have requirements that we have to report on the EMA website for our bonds. We have to post things like our district budget, our end of year financial report, and our audited statement by our auditors, along with giving the information on tax information. So like our 10 highest taxpayers in our district, along with current tax rates, collection rates, and all that information has to be posted by December 27th. And then I must present at a board meeting that all that information was done. It was done by December 27th. And we are in compliance for our bond issues that were issued and we currently are paying on. As for that, that's it for the business office tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions? Any questions?
Can I ask you a quick question, Sherry? There aren't any links to any of the financial documents on here. Where do we stand at this point in time with respect to revenue collection? I know there were some concerns last year they would be down. If you know how, or Rhonda, either one, how are we doing? In other words, financially, as far as income is concerned.
Sure, Matt. At this point in time, we're not seeing a big reduction in our tax collection rate. We're pretty much on par for what we were anticipating on collecting this year from our local real estate taxes. And even our EIT taxes have been coming in very strong again this year.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay. Again, thank you, Sherry and Rhonda. We'll move on to our Assistant Superintendent's report, Dr. Stoker.
Thank you, Mr. Fedorcha. For the public that is watching through our YouTube channel, when we opened the board meeting tonight, you may have noticed that the picture looked a little bit different than it typically does. There was several books set up on our boardroom table. These are the books that are being donated tonight on behalf of our school board members to our school libraries, so that Northern Lehigh School District students and staff can check them out. On behalf of our librarians, Mrs. Tiedman, Mrs. Frank, Mr. Green, and Mrs. Vinar, who are either on this call or watching our YouTube channel tonight, students and staff, I'd like to thank the school board member for these donations. I don't know if Mrs. Tiedman wants to add anything.
I just wanted to take the opportunity to say thank you very much for your continued support of the libraries and literacy at Northern Lehigh.
You're welcome.
Additionally, on behalf of the district, I'd also like to take this opportunity during the Board Appreciation Month to say thank you for all that you do as board members for this district. You all volunteer a great deal of time to ensure that our students get the best education and have a variety of opportunities available to them. We recognize that the job of a board member has been even more difficult this year as we navigate educating students during a pandemic. So thank you again for your dedication and support.
Thank you, Dr. Stoker. Okay.
The second announcement that I have this evening is just a reminder that there is not a federal testing waiver, and there's not expected to be one either during the 2021 school year. So as communicated out by Principal Velocity, our winter Keystone exams are set to begin at the high school on January 19th. On January 19th and January 21st, we will administer the Algebra 1 Keystone exam. January 20th will be Keystone makeups. On January 22nd and 25th, we will administer the Literature Keystones, and makeups will follow afterwards. Only students who are testing on these days should report to the high school. Students who are not involved in testing will attend classes virtually from the 19th through the 25th. Students who attend LCTI will also be virtual on those days. If you have any questions or concerns regarding testing, please contact the high school administration or your child's school counselor. Additionally, the WIDA or Access for ELS testing will also begin on January 19th. Each student in our English language development program will take 4 assessments in listening, reading, writing, and speaking. Last week, the state extended this testing window a second time through April 23rd to provide the maximum flexibility for districts to administer the access safely and to as many students as possible. Mrs. Lieberman and Mrs. Mattiola, our ELDP teachers, will be reaching out to families to let them know the specific days and times that students will test. That's all I have this evening. Thank you, Mr. Fedorcha.
Any questions for Dr. Stoker? Anyone? Okay, thank you, Dr. Stoker. We'll move on to our superintendent's report. Mr. Link.
Thank you, Mr. Fedorcha. I'd like to start by echoing Dr. Stoker's comments and share my appreciation on behalf of the entire school district for, even though you're not paid, you consistently dedicate your time and efforts on behalf of our students, our staff, our administration, and really the entire Northern Lehigh community. So again, thank you and happy School Board Appreciation Month. Next, I would like to remind everyone, our school board members and all of our administrators, that our ethics forms have been delivered or they are currently en route. So keep an eye out for those and be sure to return them, I believe, by April to central office here so we can retain them on file. If you have any questions about them, you can reach out directly to Mrs. Wagner or myself. Next, I'd like to share, seems like every month I get to share out some either individuals or organizations that make donations to our school district, and I'm happy to report that I can do that again this evening. Most recently, St. Luke's University Health Network has donated 4 Stop the Bleed kits to the school district, and Officer Naus, our school safety and security coordinator, and one of our school police officers coordinated training with St. Luke's and some of our school nurses and other personnel on how to use those in the event of an emergency. Next, I'd like to thank the Mickley-Fraval Charitable Trust donation. They donated $1,000 to the Backpack Buddies program, again, which is one of our meal stability program for our students and their families. So we'd like to share our appreciation to them this evening. And at this point, I'm going to introduce Don Marangoni and John Gunning from the McClure Company. McClure is a company that we partnered with for our guaranteed energy savings work done over the past few years. And we invited them to join us this evening, and they also presented at last Wednesday's Buildings and Grounds and Technologies Committee meeting. We had requested that they conduct a COVID study for all of our buildings in the district and come back with recommendations on how to best mitigate the spread of the virus through HVAC alterations or upgrades and plumbing alterations or upgrades. So at this point, I will share my screen and then I will turn it over to Don and John from McClure Company.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay? All right. Again, as Superintendent Leake said, partnered with the Northern Lehigh School District, and we're very thankful for that, and we appreciate the opportunity to provide you some information, help you make decisions on the best way to handle some of the situations we have around COVID and mitigating that and keeping our students and teachers safe. If you go to the next slide, you'll see, again, around partnership, not only with Northern School District, but with school districts all across the state and all types of public and private businesses and institutions. And really about a year ago, many of these districts, many of these retail establishments contacting us around COVID, around HVAC, and how to improve the air quality within their buildings. And if you go to the next slide, in November, we walked the buildings with Mr. Durr around, took a look at all the different areas. And for the most part, when we do these studies and with all the different guidelines that have come through with CDC and ASHRAE, it boils down into a few summary items. And that's what we have here on this slide with your school district as well. Making sure that the HVAC is sufficient in the buildings, upgrading filters if equipment is able to handle that, and utilizing technology such as bipolar ionization to clean the air, and installing hands-free fixtures, hands-free water fountains, and that sort of thing. John Gunning, who's our senior mechanical engineer, has taken lead on the process for our company, meeting with myself and with others in our company, with districts. And he's done a lot of studying on the information and helped do a report, which you should have received as part of this, and that's a full report. And I'm going to turn it over to him to give a high level on the findings that he had, but then to dig in a little bit deeper on the bipolar ionization so you have an understanding.
And John, I think you're muted, John.
Could hear you very, very low.
If you're connected by AirPods, you might have to disconnect them.
While John's taking a look at that, I'll go ahead and go through on the next slide there.
How about now?
Oh, there you go.
There you go, John. Thank you, Paige.
How about now? All right. Somebody say something back to me so I can still hear you.
We're good.
All right. Well, I apologize for that. I've done a number of these, sometimes multiples a week. That's the first time. And I was pretty nervous right there. So I'm glad we worked through that. As Don said, I was out to do the high-level report or the thorough report of the buildings. And as Don said, the purpose of that report is really to help, in your case, school districts understand what's all the different pieces of guidance that's come from PDE, from CDC, from ASHRAE, DOH, and help districts understand which recommendations may and may not be applicable to buildings. So in some cases, there's recommendations that wouldn't really be applicable to your buildings just because of limitations of the systems that you have, et cetera. So what we look for as we work through that report is across all of the district buildings, which ones of the recommendations do we see coming up multiple times? So as Don said, it's really making sure systems are functioning. It's air cleaning technologies such as bipolar ionization and its hands-free devices. So Don asked me to specifically dig a little bit into bipolar ionization and what it is. Historically, this technology has been around for a number of years, and where we would have seen it over the past 10 to 20 years would have been in situations where we were looking to mitigate odors from locker room spaces. We would have seen it for energy savings purposes, and we'll get into that a little bit on the next slide. But essentially how it works is on slide 4 here, you're seeing just a general diagram essentially of the devices either added to the ductwork or within the existing unit itself, and it creates ions, which are both positive and negatively charged. And essentially, it's these ions that do the work in terms of the virus and the air cleaning. Up to the top of that slide are 2 samples of the devices that we would look to install. The one on the left is used for larger equipment. The one on the right is about the size of a brick, and that's used in the smaller pieces of equipment. So if you flip to the next slide. So on this slide, we'll talk a little bit about the benefits in the upper left-hand corner there. The first one is that the ions themselves agglomerate particles, and agglomeration is just a fancy term for it bonds particles together. So if you remember, we have positive and negative ions that we've released to the space. These ions, because they're essentially magnets floating around the space, they want to attach to particles to neutralize themselves. So if it's a positive, it wants to find a negatively charged particle to neutralize itself. By doing that, what it does is it pulls particles together. And when particles are pulled together, smaller particles become larger particles. And those larger particles are easier for existing system filters to remove from the airstream. So if you recall, one of the comments that we had in terms of a recommendation that could be considered was to improve filter efficiency. But oftentimes, improving filters can be difficult because of limitations of the equipment that's installed or because of the availability of filters. So this is a way to essentially increase filter efficiency or the effectiveness of the filters without having to replace the filters. The second bullet there is really the main driver of why we've seen this technology really rise to the top of solutions, and that is that it inactivates viruses. And essentially where it really came into the mainstream was in early June when the first bipolar ionization manufacturer came out with actual third-party test data utilizing testing with the SARS-CoV-2 virus, or the COVID-19 virus that we're dealing with right now. And what it showed was that after 30 minutes of exposure to the ions, 99.4% of virus particles were rendered inactive during that time. And what that means is inactive means that they are no longer infective. And the way that that works, without getting too deep into it, is essentially these positively and negatively charged oxygen ions want to attach to the surface of the virus. When they do, the outer shell of viruses of the COVID virus, if you've seen the model of it before, it's a ball with a spike sticking out of it. The outer shell and the spikes are proteins, and proteins need hydrogen to survive. What the ions are doing to self-balance themselves is stripping hydrogen away from viruses. Without the virus, it can't have the protein that's the outer protective shell to the virus itself. In terms of the third bullet there, killing bacteria, this would be your bacteria and molds. There's test data going back years with bacteria. The process is similar to the virus process in that you're looking to remove hydrogen. In this case, for the bacteria and the living organisms, it is at the DNA level that it breaks the DNA bond and the hydrogen bond across the ladder, if you will, of the DNA. That leads into the next benefit of bipolar ionization, of the elimination of odor. So if you think of that locker room smell or the fitness center smell, that's really what you're smelling is bacteria and the gases that the bacteria, or the VOCs that the bacteria is giving off. So by eliminating the bacteria and the molds, we're eliminating the odors associated with them. And then finally, I've listed here the future opportunity to reduce energy, and we mentioned that in the previous slide. So in terms of the benefit there, if you recall, historically, this has been viewed as an air cleaning technology. And when we design a mechanical system for a building, we have to bring outside air into the building to dilute contaminants. What the mechanical code and energy code tell us is that when we are cleaning the air, we're allowed to do a calculation which reduces the amount of outside air that we need to bring in for dilution purposes. When we step back and we look at energy usage and energy cost associated with HVAC systems, one of the largest costs is the energy use associated with tempering outside air from, say, 10 degrees up to 70 degrees, or from 95 degrees down to 70 degrees. So the opportunity is there to reduce the amount of outside air that we're bringing into buildings once this technology is utilized. Now, I will say that under the current pandemic, when we are incorporating this with school districts, we are not at all recommending reducing the amount of outside air right now, because one of the things you'll recall from that we continue to hear over and over is let's get more ventilation air into these spaces. This is again a way to effectively bring in more ventilation air than the code would require after the device is installed, because we're cleaning the air, but we can do that without increasing energy usage and cost. And we can also have the effect of increasing the ventilation without overwhelming the equipment. So if you picture trying to bring in more outside air at this time of the year, we would have difficulty maintaining the space indoor temperature. So those are some of the benefits. I did also want to include on this slide a couple samples of some testing that we've done. So one of the things I always say is that ions, if you were to see this device in operation, you wouldn't see anything. We can't see or smell ions. So we have devices that we can utilize to first off measure and confirm that we are getting ion production. And then, as you recall, one of the things that we can measure and test is this agglomeration of particles. So if we are pulling particles together and making filters more effective, we would expect to see less particles in the space. So in the upper right-hand corner, one of the things that we have been offering to folks who are utilizing this technology through us, from us, is to offer pre and post testing of spaces to document the effectiveness of the equipment. So in the upper right-hand corner, it says there Eastern Pennsylvania Middle School. That's actually a school from Kutztown area school district, and a project we completed there. So if you look at the bottom of that upper right-hand corner, you'll see a comparison in room 105 before and after the device was installed. You can see that we have a low level of ions in the space, essentially whatever is occurring naturally in nature. After the device is installed, as expected, we're seeing a much higher count of ions in space. And it leads into the upper part there where we see the cumulative particle count. So pre-measurement is essentially 9,000 particles per cubic centimeter. And after the device has been installed and has been functioning, we see essentially a drop half to 60% of what the total particle count in the space was before. What we also did for our purpose is, again, we wanted to be able to assure that the system's operating as would be intended. If we're going to recommend this, we tested at a site where we had installed, we had done an ESCO project about 4 years ago, where we could have 4 identical rooms. This was actually tested at the Northern York School District. You can see the top row in that bottom section there says base reading with a standard filter. So in that room, we did no work to that space. All we did was take baseline measurements. So you'll see in that case, the blue bar is far to the right for a high particle count. The ion count in green is low and is far to the left of the table. As we step down, the next room down, the only modification we made was to install bipolar ionization. Again, we're seeing the green ion bar far to the right at a high level, as we would expect. We're seeing the blue bar for the particles reduced again. What we did in the third row there was we took a room and we simply upgraded the filter. So again, we want to see the effect of, is the effect of adding the bipolar ionization similar to improving filters? In this case, it was a MERV 13 filter, which is included in both the ASHRAE and the CDC recommendations. And you can see no ion production, essentially, as we would expect, but we see that the blue particle bar is similar in location to the bar with bipolar ionization. And there you can see in the fourth row, the net effect of installing both the filter upgrade and the bipolar ionization. And the key for me with this one is you see only a very minor decrease further in combining both the technologies. So again, we use this to help folks understand what the benefits are, and obviously there's cost implications. And for us, this shows us that there is a significant benefit to adding the bipolar ionization technology, in that you're getting similar particulate reduction performance as you would if you reduce filters, or excuse me, if you increase the filter efficiency. But we're also getting all the added benefits of the second through fifth bullets that are listed in the upper left-hand corner there. I'll wrap up just my ionization discussion piece and just my section of this presentation with this same type of testing. As I said, we do, this is something we kind of include standard with our process because we want folks to be able, and ourselves to be assured that we're getting the performance that we expect. So what we do is take a sampling of spaces both pre and post. And I'll just add to that there's a lot to this technology. If there are any questions as we move through this, please don't hesitate to ask. If there are any questions on the detailed report, please don't hesitate to ask. We're here to answer any questions you might have. So thank you. And I'll turn it back over to Don.
Okay, thank you very much, John. The final slide outlines some of the pricing. Proposed investment for bipolar ionization district-wide, that'd be at all the schools plus the field house, is $249,500. It has the breakdown of each individual school there. Schedule to implement something like this from start to completion is about 7 weeks. As John mentioned, upon the approval, we would go ahead and do some pre-testing, a couple locations at each school. We do some engineering work where we prepare plans for our installation, prepare a spreadsheet so we have everything documented. Procure the equipment, which are the ionization devices. And right now that lead time on that equipment is about 3 weeks, and then 2 to 3 weeks for installation as well. So 7 weeks there. We also, in John's report, touched on touchless plumbing fixtures. So we provided some pricing budgets for plumbing fixtures. And this is a range for unit pricing. As the quantity goes up, like the unit price will come down, but for one price, just to give you a budget. Water bottle fillers, that's replacing your water fountains, which are called bubblers, with the water bottle fillers. There's recessed and there's surface mounted. So you have 2 sets of ranges there. The surface mounted units are a little bit more easy to install. There's a little bit less post work to clean the wall up and that sort of thing. That's the surface mounted and recessed, and then also sink faucets for touchless operation as well. There's different plumbing fixtures within a restroom, but the sink is kind of the last point before people leave. So we focused our energy on that device, putting a touchless sink faucet in as well. The schedule for this is a little bit longer. Water bottle fillers, lead time just for the equipment right now is 10 to 12 weeks. To get that in, then to do installation, you're up around 15 plus weeks. The touchless sink faucets are not quite as bad, but they still would be probably 8 to 10 week total lead time. Last bullet there, just options for implementation. Again, we're here providing the information so you can help make the best decision for the district. We'll work with you. However, if you would decide, we have CoStar's procurement so that we can seamlessly move forward with a project. We can phase it. We can do partials, that sort of thing. And at this time, John, unless you have anything else, we'll kind of open it up for any questions and try to help answer any concerns or interest you have on anything that's been presented.
I will add just one clarifier to the plumbing piece of it. Just to note that Slatington does have full hands-free devices on all of the fixtures. That would be toilets, urinals, and faucets. So that piece really wouldn't be applicable to Slatington, which would include the admin portion of the building as well. So just a clarification there.
John, I have a question, I guess, that's probably best addressed to you. When we were going through this slide here, and you were showing the difference between the kind of the baseline testing and then the post installation, I guess my question is, what happens if post installation for the bipolar ionization installations does not show these results? Do you continue to troubleshoot? Do you continue to maybe it's a faulty unit, or, walk us through that process if we're not getting the results that we anticipate, if the board were to commit to doing something like this.
Okay, good question. So a couple of examples for you. So at Kutztown, we actually found in the one building that 3 out of the 4 buildings were excellent. The 4th building, we saw good ion production, but we didn't see that the particle counts had dropped significantly. And what we found is that we keep in mind that we're not doing our testing in a sealed test lab. So we have to look at what are some of the outer parameters that may be affecting it. So in the case of Kutztown, we found that when we measured, what we also measure is the ambient conditions outside the building. And we found that on the post-reading day, the outdoor readings were close to 100 times higher particle-wise. And our technician noted that outside the building of one of the sites across the street, there's a temporary cement mixing facility that I think the state is using for road projects. And on that day, they were mixing. And so while it wasn't something, if you were driving by, you wouldn't really see significant particulate in the air, because I should note the particle sizes that we're reading are nowhere near visible. They're much smaller. So in that case, it was there was really nothing to troubleshoot, because it was an outside effect. Now, what we were able to document is that on the first day we were there, if you were to compare that school's testing inside the classroom to outside the school, the inside levels were, say, about half of what they were outside. Well, when we compared them to the post day, they were like 1/20th of what they were outside. So we could see the effect when we compared it in that manner. We could see the impact of the device and that it was working. Another example, we had another school district, and we're working through with the manufacturer for the larger devices. Again, we were able to get ion readings when we measured at the equipment, but we didn't see the ion levels that we were expecting within the space. And we're working with them right now, because essentially they're more or less coming out with a technical bulletin that's going to advise us on a couple of slight modifications that need to be made to the actual installation. It was installed per their instructions, but they found some recommendations that they have to improve it and get the higher levels. So in that case, we're going to be going back, and we'll incorporate, essentially, it's kind of like the warranty or a recall, if you will, on your car. Similar concept. We'll have that technical bulletin in hand, and we'll make those modifications in the field.
Thank you, John.
Sure.
And they would also be, so any classroom that kind of has the kind of the upright HVAC unit gets one, but then buildings where the units actually sit on top of the roofs, it's one ionization device. A larger one actually does multiple spaces within the building. Is that accurate?
Correct. So the reason the pricing varies in some cases a fair amount from building to building is it's really based on putting the right device in the air moving equipment. So in the case of, for example, the high school, that has larger air handling units which serve multiple spaces. So we look to install the device at that air moving piece of equipment. In the case of the middle school, Peters and Slatington, the classrooms there have their own dedicated units. So we put a device into each room. One of the benefits of the system is that we can select the varying sizes of devices to go in essentially all styles, types, and sizes of HVAC units. It is the reason we can execute it so quickly is that it is a relatively small device that gets added to it. There's no demolition that occurs. You're not purchasing a large piece of equipment. It's a very precise device that gets added into. But yes, you are correct with your statement.
Any questions from the school board members?
Mr. Link, just curious where these costs will come from. Can we go through how that's gonna, how we would pay for this?
Good, thank you for asking that. So this would be anything proposed here tonight that the board would support would be from either the current ESSERS funds that we have available, which, you know, kind of came online last school year and are available through next school year. And one of those, the original ESSER COVID relief funding, we still have $180,000 left in there. By the end of this month, first week of February, we will be receiving our the portion of the original amount of money dedicated to each state from the federal government. When that came down and then it trickled down into the school districts, the state held a certain percentage of that money, and they are now ready to release that to the school districts. We will receive $45,000 in that disbursement. And then this has not initially been, or no, I shouldn't say initially, we have not received formal notification from PDE yet, but all of the information that is flowing to us is that Kutztown, Northern Lehigh School District will receive in the ESSERS 2 funding $1,352,173. So amongst those three sources of funding, we can dedicate this work to be fully funded through those sources, not through our general operating budget.
Mr. Link, I have a question.
Sure, and if I, Mrs. Heckman, if I just add one more statement to that. All of these projects have been identified as specifically allowable under those sources of money.
So to piggyback off that comment, can you explain what those grants, what we are allowed to spend those grants on?
Sure. Give me 1 second here. I have to pull that up in one of my documents here. So bear with me 1 second here. I'm going to stop sharing this document and share another one. Okay, so give me a thumbs up if you can see that. Okay, so specifically, so this is eligible uses under the ESSER 2, and these particular expenditures would be these two bullets right here, and if I can enlarge that, I will. So conduct school facility repairs and improvements to enable operations of schools to reduce risk of virus transmission and exposure to environmental health hazards and to support student health needs. So the plumbing fixtures going to touchless controls for any of the faucets, and that would be for student bathrooms and faculty bathrooms, and the improvements to our water fountains by actually replacing any number of them that the board, if the board would want to, any number that they would identify per building, to use water bottle filling stations instead of the traditional water fountain would fall into that particular bullet, Mrs. Heckman. The next one deals specifically with HVAC. So engage in inspection, testing, maintenance, repair, replacement, and upgrade projects to improve the indoor air quality in school facilities, including mechanical and non-mechanical heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems, filtering, purification, and other air cleaning, fans, control systems, and windows and doors, repair and replacement. So the HVAC work would fall specifically into that category.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Link,
Yes.
with removing the current water fountains and going to a bottle filling station, will some of the standard thought that students can't have those types of water bottles during classrooms, will that be changing? I know in the past, the middle school, for instance, they couldn't bring in water bottles unless it was doctor approved. Will that change with us changing?
So that model is currently in place right now through our health and safety plan. And I think, one of the things that we've learned through all of this is that, one, our students and children have been really responsible, and they now understand why the need to be responsible if we're going to allow them to use these, like a personal water bottle that they can refill throughout the day. I'll look to the principals to weigh in on that, but to my knowledge, we have not had any disciplinary infractions around that new way of hydration. Do any of the building principals want to weigh in on that?
This is Jill. There have been none. The middle school students have been excellent with that. They know where to, how to get even extra bottles of water to fill in their own personal bottles if they're not even carrying 2 or more on their own. So there have been absolutely no disciplinary actions on that.
Yeah,
Same at Peters Elementary School.
Yeah, I agree with Jill. We have not had a problem, and as a matter of fact, we have allowed students to have water bottles since that really hot summer that we had when we had the science wing being done. We didn't have our AC was a little bit faulty, so we had allowed the water bottles, and we have not had an issue.
Same at Peters Elementary, no discipline related to water bottles.
And if I may, I don't mean to put either of you on the spot, but Aiden or Paige, from kind of a student lens, have you utilized your own personal water bottle? How's that working for you? If you are bringing in your own water bottles.
Personally, I'm only when we were in school, I'm only in for 1 block of the day. So typically, I'm usually fine too. But I have seen students, take advantage of it though. I don't know. Maybe Paige could weigh in a little more.
I would love to have a water bottle filler because our water fountains aren't the greatest, and so as like a multi-sport athlete, sometimes I go from my school practices to tournament practices, and I'm carrying 3 extra bottles of water and like my own personal water bottle. So it would be really nice to have another like filtered, like safer water to be able to utilize at the school.
Thank you both. And Paige, you actually just reminded me of something. Don or John, do you kind of want to explain the filter cartridges and kind of we had a brief conversation about that at the Buildings and Grounds Committee meeting about life expectancy and really just about life expectancy on all these devices, and then maybe touch on the filters a little bit.
Yeah, each water bottle filler does come with a filter, and I propose to provide an extra one as well along with that, just so you have one for a couple years. They're good for I forget how many, 3,000 gallons or 300,000 gallons in 1 year. So figure about 1 year. And the filter is very similar to a filter that you would have in your refrigerator. If you have water in your refrigerator, it's kind of that long cylindrical shape. They're warranted. The compressors are warranted for 5 years, but it's a long use water bottle filler. I don't have the life expectancy right off the top of my head, but 15 plus years is what. John, unless you can add any additional commentary on that.
Yeah, I'll add a couple of things that we did that we've mentioned at the Building and Grounds Committee meeting. That as far as the plumbing fixtures themselves, whether it's the sensor faucets or the bottle filling stations, we expect the same life as we would get out of a standard plumbing fixture. As compared to that, I will add that as far as the bottle filler stations go, there is flexibility with exactly what's ordered for that. So you can essentially get a station that is simply a bottle filler. We have some districts that want to still have a combination bubbler and bottle filler. Again, the bubbler is not being used now for pandemic reasons, but it's there to be reactivated should they so choose in the future. So there's flexibility with what's selected for that. As far as the bipolar ionization equipment, one of the benefits of this device compared to some of the other technologies, whether it's filters or ultraviolet systems, is that there really is no annual maintenance associated with these. It's not like a UV bulb where you need to replace a bulb every year. The device has one moving part that moves once every 3 days, essentially. So while the device itself carries a 1-year warranty, the manufacturers are projecting these as 10-year life expectancy. So it's a very maintenance-free device that has a long life associated with it.
Thank you both.
Sure.
Are there any other questions?
If there are no other questions, Mr. President, then I would like to make a motion for the recommendation of Administration and Technology Buildings and Grounds Committee meeting. I move that we approve the installation of 130, reading the wrong one. Approve the HVAC upgrades at a cost not to exceed $249,500, funding through the ESSER COVID relief funds. So I'm looking at the filters and bipolarization section of it.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Bob Kern, I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved in second. Questions?
I do have a question, Mr. Fedorcha.
Please.
Does this motion include, the touchless, everything that we talked about, or just the HVAC portion?
Just if you're looking at that, it would be just the first one. Just the first under the 249,000. The other two parts of those are not part of the motion.
Okay, thank you.
Existing motion, I'm not saying, okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Fedorcha, this is Bob Kern. Can I make a comment as well?
Certainly.
One other thing that I'd like the board to consider is that right now I know COVID is at the heightened attention, and hopefully, we pray that this will go by and we can get back to normal, that this also will be effective against influenza, any other type of bacterial things that can be transmitted, through the air. So it's not just here and now, it's something that will be effective, going forward for many other diseases or bacteria. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kern. Anyone else? Anyone? Seeing none, it has been properly moved and seconded. If there's no other discussion, I will call for a vote. Madam Secretary.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Ms. Heckman?
Yes.
Ms. Hvac? Yes. Mr. Keegan?
Yes.
Mr. Kern?
Yes.
Ms. Culp?
Yes.
Ms. Martnell?
Yes.
Mr. Disler?
Yes.
Mr. Fedorcha?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Just so I understand this now, we did pass the first part. Is there any discussion while we're here on the other two items? Is there any discussion on those?
This is Robin. I'd like to make a recommendation for the technical village grounds to approve the installation of 113 touchless faucets at a cost not to exceed $135,600. Funding ESSER COVID relief.
Mr. Fedorcha, I think I got that pretty well. Would you like me to repeat that?
Would you, yeah, I was just going to say, if somebody heard it a little more clearly, can we have that? Is that a motion, Mr. Disler?
Yes, it is. It's a motion
Okay.
to approve the installation of 113 touchless faucets at a cost not to exceed $135,600, funding through the ESSER COVID relief funds.
Okay.
Point of clarification, this is Mrs. Martineau.
Yes,
Does
Ms.
that,
Martineau?
is that also these touchless faucets, does that include these water bottle filling stations? Is that one and the same?
No, it does not.
Okay.
That is a third part of that. So right now we have a motion on the floor. We don't have a second yet to approve the second part, which is the 113 touchless faucets. Do I have a second? Do I have a second?
Donna Cope, second.
Okay, it's been moved in second. Any discussion?
I have a question.
Yes.
Do any buildings or any of our facilities currently have touchless faucets?
Yes, all of Slatington Elementary.
Okay.
And district office.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
I have a comment if I could, and I'm going to give the same comment I made at the Buildings and Grounds meeting. First of all, the first time I had the experience of working with a battery operated fountain was at a gym, which was a little over a year ago, and you needed to have a bottle, and I don't carry a bottle with me, and I don't know if all of you do. Maybe you do. My son does. My wife does on a pretty regular basis. I don't. And I suspect a lot of other people don't carry a bottle with them also. And I realize this is all part of the dual motion. But you should have seen me in the gym trying to press that button with my finger and get my hand under there and get a drink out of that water fountain. It wasn't a very, very pleasant thing. Also, I think Bob Kurt asked the other night, he asked some very interesting questions about, the ongoing cost upgrade. There's these battery operated fountains do have some costs and some upgrades to them. There's some work that needs to be done on them on a regular basis. The third thing is we're looking at like 15 weeks out to get these, which would be essentially, in my opinion, we're looking at the end of the semester. And so these probably won't have any virus effect until the students come back in September. And I might be cautiously optimistic, but I think with some of the vaccines out there, et cetera, hopefully, knock on wood, whatever cliche you want to use, this isn't going to be a real big problem come September. I may be wrong, and if I am, we can always re-implement it, and we can come back and look at these. But it's kind of a long way out, and so I'm not real comfortable spending that money. And I realize it's like free money, let's spend it. I don't want to be a pig at the trough. And I think there's other things. This is Northern Lehigh, the second poorest school district in Lehigh County. And we're going out and buying touchless fountains. I don't think that's a good way to spend our money. I think there's a lot of other things that our district needs. We can buy technology. We were talking about hotspots the other day, things like that. Curriculum, stuff for our students that can make teaching better. That could be a better way to spend this money. And I guess I'm not just comfortable spending it on this. And I guess the last thing I want to look at is I look back, and last June we increased taxes by about 2% for our taxpayers, which brought in a little over $200,000. And if we wind up buying touchless fountains and bottle fillers, that's going to be about $180,000, almost as much as we raise taxes on our citizens. And I wonder how many of our citizens would step back and say, spending money and buying battery operated fountains is a good way to spend my tax money. I don't think it is, and I can't support the motion. And that's all I got to say.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Just a couple clarifying questions for you. In your comments there, you had referenced the fountains a number of times, and just, you know, specifically for the motion that's at hand, it's for the faucet controls.
Yes,
so
I understand that, and I guess I'm telling you up front that I don't support the second part either. I don't support either part of it, any of the fountain stuff. So.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. And then just the second part of, and you're absolutely right, you know, we did do a 2% tax increase, which was driven by the local property tax. The funding that I described earlier is coming down from the federal level. So yes, ultimately it gets traced back to the American tax dollar, but it's a different tax base there, just for clarity on that.
Okay.
Okay, then to clarify my point, yes, we're probably going to get that money. It's not guaranteed yet, but there certainly are other things in the eligible use of the yesers too that we could spend the money on it. And personally, I believe there's other things that Northern Lehigh might need that are more important than battery operated fountains or touchless fountains or things like that, that we could spend the money on. That's all I'm saying. And I understand it's different funding. And it's like, I don't want to be the kind of person that says, oh, here's some free money, go spend it. That I've never been that way, and I don't want to be that way now. So I'm trying to look out for the best interests of Northern Lehigh students and staff. And I think the money could be better spent on other things than battery operated fountains and touchless fountains.
I think Mr. Green hit the nail on the head where I was trying to go with my questions, and his points were the points that I was just about to bring up. You know, we are in January, and obviously the lead time on these items is quite a bit. So like Mr. Green said, it's a lot of money. And while it would be a nice to have upgrade, I don't think it's a need to have. And I think it would be a safer idea to save this money for maybe something that is more of a need to have down the line, just based on, like he said, the fact that we did increase taxes last year. And yes, this money is coming from taxpayers in Hawaii and Kentucky and Virginia. It's still money that we won't have to raise from ourselves later.
I have a question also for Sherry. Sherry, that COVID funding, is that just a short-term availability? And if we don't use it, we lose it. Is that correct?
That is correct. It has, I think it's till 2023. I think they're saying 2 years for that. But yes, it has to be used in that time. If not, we lose it. That is correct.
But that's a two-year period of time. It's not like we have to use it next week or next month or by the end of the year. 2 years to use it.
So that's why, Matt, that's why I asked for clarification, the length of time period.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Again, just sharing information. You're right. There are absolutely other direct uses that can be that are allowable under this funding. You know, for instance, last time we had discussed that even if the board were to go all in with this, there would still be approximately $950,000 left to spend towards instruction, technology, those type of you know, equally, if not more. I mean, at our core, what we do is we educate children. And just know that there are still funds available for that. You know, just all the information's out on the table.
And again, let me chime in for 2 seconds, just as Michelle Heckman had asked, these funds they must be used for new purchases. So we cannot use them to supplement stuff that is already part of our general fund budget. So just to say we're going to use it to offset a cost that a taxpayer in our community is currently paying for, if it's something already in our budget, we cannot use this money for that. It has to be for new type purchases.
I don't think that was my suggestion, Sherry. I think my suggestion was that over the course of the next 2 years, there's going to be other items coming down the road, i.e. perhaps some hotspots, technology, curriculum, etc., that we can, of course, spend the money on. I'm not suggesting that we can pay salaries or put in a new football field or anything like that. I understand there's a difference in the funds, but nevertheless, I think we can use these things for some of those other items that might be more important than push button fountains. And I'm sorry I keep calling them push button fountains, but I apologize for that.
I'm going to weigh in here too. That would include cleaning supplies, any kind of maintenance supplies that would be COVID related, which ultimately would have effect on other budgets. I mean, if we don't have to buy it out of that budget and we're allowed to spend it out of this one, we're ultimately saving money in the long run. And the other thing that I'm going to key in on is the use of technology that we're so involved in right now. And I think a positive direction, something that I am 100% full support from. Right now we're using technology for learning. It's not designed that way. It's a tool to enhance learning. And once we get back to normal, I want to see that continue and even further enhanced. And again, my background, and I'm going to just say it in general public, my background is in that realm. And I spoke all over the country on this. It's what I did. Flipping the classroom, blended learning. It just opens up so much opportunities for kids to engage in learning. And I'd rather see our money go in that direction than see it go for a touchless, sink, where we all know that soap and hot water kills the infection anyway. So if we follow the guidelines going forward, I think we're already there. That's just my thoughts. I have some other thoughts on the bubbling machines with water, and I'll save it for that motion. Thank you.
Do we have one?
I have a comment, Bob Keegan.
Yes, Mr. Keegan.
What was the recommendation of the committee and administration?
The recommendation of the committee basically was to put these three motions up to the full board. Mr. Lincoln on the recommendation of the administration.
That's right. Administration is recommending the faucets and the HVAC upgrades. Initially, we were recommending replacing all fountains. We're now recommending selected fountains within the school district buildings, replacing the faucets, and then doing the HVAC upgrades. It was my understanding, as I look back at the notes from the Buildings and Grounds Committee, that the committee supported the HVAC upgrades and the faucets, but there was disagreement on the water bottle filling stations.
Yes, that is correct. And my recommendation was the second on the list, and it did not include the position on approving the installation of the water bottle filling station.
Right. And that's the motion that's currently on the table.
And I agree with that. Being on the committee, this is Bob Kern, but having thought about it, when it's presented to you in the committee situation, it's a lot to absorb in a short period of time. And having a week, to think about things, I mulled over what I thought the really important things are. And, maybe I've changed my opinion on that over time, but I just wanted to share my thoughts that I did earlier, why I'm thinking the way I am.
Okay.
The only thing I would like to say is that safety of our children and our staff is primary here. And I believe that that's what we should do. Make sure our kids are safe in our buildings and our staff is safe in our buildings. That's all I have to say.
This is Robin again, and I also was considering on what Mr. Kern's previous comments were about not only with the COVID, but also with the other contamination and whatever that might come through our buildings. And also, I did take note of the simple statement that Paige had made about being able to fill her water bottles. And I don't know, Paige, I don't remember if you said that you had a problem filling them, or the taste wasn't to your satisfaction?
Yeah, a lot of like the water, like this has gone like for like a lot of us kids like go to school and like let's say like I was in theater as well. We would not use any of the water fountains except for the one down by the band room. That was the only one that was like usually clear, because sometimes the water fountains or even like the sinks in the bathrooms would turn yellow, and a lot of us just kind of like were uncomfortable with that. And I think that's why I would feel a lot better if we had something along the system like a new water fountain. Like I get the sinks, like not necessarily needing, like the turn on sinks, but it would be really nice to have some new water fountains.
And I can back up
If I-
there. I know. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, if I might add, this is Mrs. Martineau. I've spoken with multiple regarding the water bottle stations, not the touchless faucets. I've spoken with multiple physicians and nurses and physicians assistants and other medical professionals that all are way pro the kids having water bottles with them through the day for health reasons and sanitation reasons and all sorts of things. That's why I was asking if that was included in the initial motion or not.
Right.
Because I do think the touch faucets are a bit of an extravagance, but I think I've witnessed the yellow water myself personally, and while I'm told it's safe, I understand that I've also had to carry multiple water bottles, and I think that might be also a sanitation issue, with children having their own source of water throughout the day and access to it when they need it.
Mr. Fedora, Bob Kern here, real quick. I'm confused. I thought we were only looking at the second part of the motion and not the bubbling stations.
Mr. Kern, you are correct.
Thank you.
At this point, and that's what I was going to clarify after everybody had a chance to address things. At this point, we have passed the first part. That has been passed. We are now have a motion and a second for the second part, which is the touchless faucet. It has nothing to do with the water filling. Right. That could be another motion after we get through this one or not. But my point is to answer your question and to clarify, we are now just looking at the motion on the touchless faucets. And
Mr. Fedora, this is Gail. I just have a quick question. In the areas that we're putting the fountains, is everything else touchless? And if they use these when they leave the room, wherever it is, they're not touching doors, they're not opening doors, they're not touching handles. Does everything become touchless, or is it already that way and we're just doing the sinks?
So it's just the sinks, the faucets, not the fountains. And
sure.
The reason why we decided to go with recommending the faucets was kind of if you kind of do a task analysis of using the restroom, the bathroom, the last thing you do is wash your hands, right? That you're touching something. And then the type of paper towel dispensers that we have are the single distribution C-fold towels. So they're kind of hanging down. You don't touch the rest of the box. You just grab the towel and pull it out, and then you toss the towel. So we specifically said we just want to do that kind of last part of washing your hands, which is at the faucet. So not the urinals or toilet flushes. The only building that has that is Slatington in the district office, and that's because that was part of the renovation in 2010.
Mr. Link, this is Mrs. Martineau again. Can you, or Mr. Pine, if he's on, tell us how those touchless faucets are working in Slatington, and if there've had to be replacements of, somebody mentioned they're battery operated. I'm unfamiliar with the process, but have there been any problems with the ones that are currently in the building?
So Mr. Pine, I don't know if you want to speak to students using them if there's been issues, and then Mr. Durr might be best equipped to talk about how the frequency of changing batteries.
Yeah, so I don't want to say too much to give out too many secrets, but the biggest issue with students using them is them figuring out how to unhook the battery piece. Otherwise, they work just fine. I don't know much about the replacement of the batteries, but we don't have issues with them otherwise.
Mr. Durr?
I can speak to the faucets, longevity of the faucet and batteries. The faucets were installed here in our renovation project 2010 to 2012. I replaced maybe a sensor or two on a urinal, a toilet. I don't know that I replaced any sensors on any sinks, but I'm going to say at the most I've replaced maybe 5 since that project has taken place. Battery life, there are some faucets still running on the same batteries that were originally installed with the project. And I think the ones in Slatington run on four C-size batteries. So they've performed very well, and battery life has been excellent on those faucets.
Thank you, Mr. Durr.
Any other?
And Mr. Pine.
Yes, thank you. Any other comments or questions on the existing motion? Hearing none, Madam Secretary. Roll call.
Ms. Heckman?
No.
Ms. Hvac? No. Mr. Keegan?
Yes.
Mr. Kern?
No.
Ms. Culp?
No.
Ms. Martineau?
No.
Mr. Disler?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
No.
I'm sorry, Mr. Green.
Oh, I apologize. No.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Fedorcha?
No.
Motion does not pass.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Is there any person who would like to make a motion on the third part, which is the water bottle filling stations?
Does someone need to make a motion before I'm allowed to ask a question?
Yes. Which and making the motion does not mean we're going to vote yes on either. So please feel free to make the motion, Michelle.
Mr. Fedorcha, this is Bob Kern. I'll make the motion so we can discuss. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a second?
Michelle Heckman, I'll second.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. It's been moved and properly seconded. Michelle, you have a question. Go ahead,
Thank
please.
you. So obviously from the discussion of the 2 prior motions, what I'm hearing is that some of our buildings have water coming out of the faucets that is either yellow or not, I don't want to say not safe to drink, but not enjoyable to drink. Can we true or false this? At least at the high school, there's only one reasonable water source on the ground floor. And is this an issue at Slatington? Is this an issue at Peters? Like, can we talk about this a little bit?
I'd be welcome to field that question. Occasionally, sometimes in the borough, if they flush lines or something, or if they use the fire hydrant, sometimes we get yellow water, discolored. The high school in particular, we have made a couple repairs, plumbing repairs, and we have had to shut down the water to the entire building. So when that happens, it riles up the water in the lines. And despite even flushing them for several hours over a couple of days, eventually the yellow tinge goes away. But that's primarily the problem, that, you know, it's a repair that we made, and then the water will be discolored for a couple of days.
What about the other buildings, Mr. Durr? Is that an issue at the elementary buildings or the middle school?
Not at Slatington. Peters does not have that problem. It's primarily the middle school and the high school.
Mr. Durr, if I may, would putting water filling bottle stations in prevent the scenario that you're discussing?
I'm not sure that the filter, maybe John or Don would be able to address that question, but I don't know if the water bottle filling station filter would remove that tint to the water?
Can we get an answer on that?
As far as from our perspective, I think that's something that we'd have to reach out specifically to the manufacturer of to see if it's something that they've experienced. Certainly, you're adding a high level of filtration to it, to the water service, but I do not honestly know if it's going to do something about the color of the water. Again, the main purpose of the filling stations is to create a usable water source, again, from the perspective of, in most cases, due to the pandemic, we're not utilizing the bubblers on water fountains. This is opening up an avenue to restore a source of water to the general public, to students and staff. But that is definitely something we could specifically find out about on the filters.
Mr. Link, can you again tell us, I remember, and I don't have the number offhand, how many water fountains, how many bubblers are we talking about? And you don't have to go building by building, but the entire district, and what the total cost of that was again? Thank you.
Sure. Give me 1 second here. I need to do some quick math because I only have the total cost of the fountains and the faucets together. So just give me 1 second, please.
Not a problem. In the essence of time, then I'll add my comment. I know there's a lot of them, and I'm just going to say that. Is it possible that we don't put a bubbling water supply machine at every water fountain, that we designate areas in the building where students can go fill up the water bottle? First of all, hydration is very, very important. And I think, when we're talking about spreading COVID, or any influenza, putting your head in a water fountain, I never felt comfortable with, even when there wasn't the concern. Having a source of water that is more secure, less hands-on, not breathing all over it, makes me feel a little bit better. But my question is it possible to put them in key spots in the building that we don't necessarily have to replace every water fountain, but certainly enough that it can, conduct its business for the general population? That's all.
And if I may, this is Mrs. Martineau, I want to piggyback on that. Mr. Green brought up a concern that I hadn't considered, and that was, what if a student or a child or a teacher, anybody, doesn't happen to have a water bottle and all of the fountains have been replaced? I think that Mr. Kern makes a good point that we could have a designated water bottle filling station and maybe not replace every single source. Is that doable?
So the answer to that is yes, on both accounts. There are 38 water fountains within the district, which, if we were to do them all, would be $242,500. Since our last meeting, administratively, we've also revisited the topic. And we're thinking, even if it was just one station per building level, or maybe, for a building as large as Slatington, like two upstairs, two downstairs. For the high school, one upstairs, one downstairs, and one on the ground floor type of thing. So really the answer is we can configure them however the board would so direct for, total number of stations throughout the district.
Superintendent Link, if I may add a little bit of information. So there are options with the water bottle fillers. You may just have a single filler. You can also have a filler with a bubbler on it. So you'll have options as to how you want to configure it.
That's a good point, Don. Thank you. And I'm just going to correct myself. We're recommending, initially we had recommended 38 of those water bottle filling stations throughout the district, but really there's many more water fountains currently in the district than that, because there's usually two of them at each location, a traditional height one and then an ADA accessible height one next to it, we were recommending to combine those into one water bottle filling station at an appropriate height. You know, so it's already less than the number of water fountains we were discussing or we have in a district. And now we're kind of saying, well, why don't we do some strategically placed in each building and not replace all of them?
Yeah, and keep in mind the Bob Kern again, you know, the gymnasium area, obviously, you know, with the athletes that would be there that would need to hydrate probably more frequently. Even, you know, people in the stands, you know, people carrying water bottles. I mean, I think it's becoming commonplace. You know, I watch people, you know, milling about, and a lot of people have their own bottles, you know, just for that sanitary reasons. You know, maybe I'm a bit old school, and I'm not going to throw Matt Green under the bus, but, you know, being a little bit old school, we're not as well prepared, but I think our youth is. And I don't know. These are just some thoughts to try and maybe get the best bang for our dollar and, you know, kind of satisfied needs at the same time of having a reserve to do other things with. That's all just my opinion. Doesn't mean that I'm right.
You're too young to be right. When you grow up, you'll have a decent opinion, Bob, but that's another story. So, I think I'm thinking along the same lines. I'm not opposed to bottle fillers. I'm just opposed to making every fountain a bottle filler. And I'm also opposed to spending, you know, $250,000 doing that. But if the administration was willing to say something like, you know, whatever, 4 at the high school, 4 at the middle school, you know, something like that, you know, I could work with that. I could live with that. 38 seems like an awful lot of fountains to convert over for me. So actually we agree, Bob, believe it or not.
Thank you, Matt.
I agree with Mr. Green and Mr. Kern. I'm on board for a few in each building, but not replacing every existing unit.
Okay.
Same here. I agree as well. What's the point of order if there's already been a motion seconded?
The original motion never had a number of units identified in it.
Right. I was going to ask that. That's what I was going to say. Right now, we have a motion to approve carte blanche. Let me ask this question then, Mr. Link. Could we tonight have a recommendation as to how many, so we know that, or is there any reason why we cannot have this motion withdrawn and put on next month's agenda with more specifics?
We could absolutely do that, knowing that we want to prioritize the HVAC work, and then for the water bottle filling stations, you know, it would just push back the kind of supply chain timeline a little bit, and then the installation timeline. So yes, we can do that.
I mean, would a month really make a big difference in that? Or are you prepared to? Would you be prepared? And I'm not putting you on the spot, please. I'm not trying to do that. To make a recommendation tonight. I'm just opening that up before I continue with the motion.
This is Bob Keegan. I do have a comment. Why can't we leave it to administration and cap the amount tonight, the amount of money to be spent?
I guess I don't know the total. Well, I don't know. Go ahead, Mr. Link. Do you want to answer that?
I'm just doing some quick water fountain locating in my head here. I believe if we were to do one on each floor in the high school, and I'll look for Mr. Velocity's input on that. Slatington, so Dr. Stoker, if you want to keep track of this here. So that'd be 3 at the high school, 1 at the field house in the main hallway there. I would say 2 upstairs at Slatington, you know, 1 by the cafeteria, 1 near the other end, and then 1 on the first floor near the kind of common area and gymnasium there somewhere, Mr. Pine. Okay, I would say probably 1 in the administration building, Administrators can duke it out whether it goes upstairs or downstairs. And I would say Peters, probably one upstairs and then one at each end of the hallway downstairs. I'll look to Mr. Schneiderite for confirmation on that. And then at the middle school, I would say probably one near the back of the building and one towards the front main hallway. And I'll look to Mrs. Chamberlain for confirmation on that.
Mr. Link, don't forget about the gymnasium area.
Yeah,
of the high school.
I would say the gymnasium, and also, Mr. Link, I think maybe because of the type of area, I think the field house maybe should have two. I mean, if we have a long line of kids wanting to fill their bottles, one would be very time consuming. So I would consider that. And maybe if you're looking, what we're looking at now, going on with Mr. Keegan had said, if you would take the approximate number we have right now and come with a figure and maybe raise it a little bit to add one or two somewhere else would also work. I don't know if we want to really tie in just to the number, but more or less to give you a max of the cost. That's all. I'm just asking.
I'm hearing about 20. Maybe we give them a range from 20 to 25. Figure out that cost. It's capped at that, and that should do it.
Would that do it?
Minus the gyms, you were at 15 so far.
This is Robin. I agree with Bob with the 20 to 25 cap, or 25 cap.
So it could be worded not to exceed 25 units.
Yes. Yeah. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes.
And
what was your total, Dr. Stoker? How many were in that list that came?
We were at
You're muted, Dr. Stoker.
You're muted. Yeah, there you go.
We were at 15 before the second one at the field house and before adding anything at the gym.
Okay, 15. Okay.
Mr. Kern, if you could just clarify, were you recommending to put one inside each gymnasium? Is that what you were recommending?
Yeah, I'm actually thinking that the gym complex of the high school, and where the water fountains are. I know there's one outside the wrestling room. I know they're by the girls' locker room. There's one in the main lobby. There's one just inside the doorway on the male side. When you think of spectators and you think of our athletes, definitely at least two in that gymnasium area. That's what I'm thinking. That are accessible to public and obviously to our athletes. One on the girls' side, one on the boys' side. I don't know. But just knowing that facility very, very well, I just think that might be important. That's all.
I think if there was a cap of 25, we could work within that and probably come under it.
And then what would the savings be with that? So we were at 38, you said? And
we were at 38, but it was a mix of surface mount and the recessed ones. So
okay.
Either way, it would be less than, I'm sure at this point, considerably less than, we're talking about 13 less units. So it would definitely, I'm going to definitely be less than $242,000.
I'm comfortable with that. Thank you.
I guess Mr.
Dorcho, you're muted if you're speaking.
Okay, what I was saying was, if we're at the point in our discussion to look at a maximum of 25 units, then I would suggest then that the maker and the seconder amend their motion to include that in their initial motion, that we can vote on a motion which would include the number of units.
And I believe it was Mr. Kern that first presented the motion.
Yeah, Mr. Kern and Mrs. Culp, I believe. Oh no,
Mrs. Heckman.
Me. Mrs. Heckman. Go ahead, Mr. Kern.
I think he just dropped off.
Okay.
Mr. Kern, you just muted yourself again.
Oh, there he is.
Hello, I'm still here. I'm having internet issues. I apologize.
Okay, would you amend your motion to read maximum of 25 units?
Are you there, Mr. Kern? Maybe while he's logging back in, Mr. Hill, I believe you had indicated that there were some comments.
Yes, we did have a few questions. The first one was from Melissa Morgan. She asked about what about the water smelling like pool water, which I believe she means a chlorine smell. Do we have any comments on that?
Mr. Durr?
And this is when you were discussing the water at the high school, by the way, when we were talking about the some of the dirty water at the high school. This question came up during that time.
Okay, we can still have. Is there any comment, Mr. Durr?
So the water supply comes from the boroughs. So whatever treatment they've added to it is they chlorinate it and probably UV it, all those kinds of things. So whatever. That's how it comes to us, and I don't have anything more to add to it. That's
okay. Thank you.
Okay. The next question was Rebecca Hears asked, "Will the water bottle filling stations replace water fountains, or will drinking water still be available to the students without a bottle?"
It sounds like potentially there may be a motion where there would be some of each.
Okay, and then we just had some comments. Eric King said, as a community member, we don't even drink right from a faucet. We filter it. I think bottle stations are a good idea, not only for better filtered water, but also for illness beyond COVID. That was a comment. Medita Bender said the PTO is always looking for things to donate to the students and staff, and we would be happy to look into donating water bottles if this is an issue holding back the filling stations. And then we also had Eric King and Medita Bender again, basically saying it sounds like their kids would like to drink from the bottle fillers. That is all we have right now. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Link, can I ask this other question then? With the water bottle fillers, we could have bubblers, which would also then be the same as someone drinking from the fountain. Is that correct?
I believe that's how they're designed. And I'll look to Don and John for that they could either use it as a fountain or use it as a filler. Again, just my own thoughts on that is the less we can do to have people's faces right by these devices, the safer it is moving forward for any type of virus or germs in general.
Yeah, so I can add to that. Essentially, they could be ordered as simply bottle fillers, or they could be ordered as a bottle filler with a combination bubbler, or some combination of both. And that could be on a case-by-case basis, and whatever best met the district's needs.
This is Mrs. Martineau. What's the cost difference between those? Is there a different cost?
No, essentially, no, there is not.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Anything else, Mr. Hill?
Nope, that's all we have for questions and comments from the public.
Okay, for this issue. Okay. Do we have Mr. Kern back yet?
Yes, I apologize. I'm having internet issues, and I'm bouncing between my phone and this. I'm back.
Okay.
But I make a motion that we cap the water bubbling machines at 25 for the district.
Okay. So you were amending the motion. Mrs. Heckman, will you accept that?
I'm sorry, may I clarify, just because they're different things. They're water bottle filling stations, which is different than a bubbler. Just so we can get it into the minutes correctly.
Okay.
I thought it didn't matter. The cost. I didn't think. I'm sorry. I thought the cost was the same, so we could make a decision because there would not be a cost issue.
That's what we were just told. Yes.
That's, I mean, because I wouldn't think, I would prefer to see if there's no cost difference, I would prefer to see the bubbler and have the option to have the bubbler and the water bottle filled, because that again would eliminate a lot of closeness to the unit for people drinking.
And that's why I made the motion I did. Yes.
Mr. Link, I see questions in your mind.
I'm just, for myself, I'm just looking for clarity. A bubbler is simply a water fountain. Is that correct, John or Don?
Correct. So the water fountain that you have now, the bubbler is the actual apparatus that you put your face down to. So
it may be better to be characterized as a combination water bottle filling station and bubbler.
That's
exactly.
Okay. That's what I was going to suggest. Mr. Kern, will you accept that as to your motion?
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Mrs. Heckman, will you accept that?
I will. I will second.
Okay. Back to the discussion. Any discussion? Seeing none.
Is there any
Hearing
thoughts,
none.
Mr. Fedorcha, is there any
Yes.
thoughts of putting a maximum value or a maximum cost involved in that in the motion? I'm just discussing that, and I did not amend the motion. 25 units would cost 156,000. 160,000, something like that, in case we get the more expensive ones, or is that too restrictive?
I'm going to yield to. I mean, do we need to put a value? I mean,
I don't know. Normally, when we pass a motion, we have a maximum cost associated with that motion, regardless of what that motion is. I'm just throwing it out, and I was being liberal and adding $4,000 to the cost above $6,250 a unit. So,
okay. The motion itself had no cost to it anymore with the 25 put in.
Yes, that's correct. Which is highly unusual for all our motions, because if you look at our motions, they normally do have a maximum cost, not to exceed $249.50, not to exceed $135,600, and then this one has a blank. We don't have a maximum cost, so I don't know.
So,
Mr. Fedorcha, I'll amend my motion if I may.
Okay.
I make a motion that we do not exceed $270,000 to purchase 25 units. The bubblers or the water filling stations. And that way we have a little leeway in case of the cost increase.
Well, I think we need to specify the fact that we're doing the combination, because I don't.
Yeah,
let's stay there with the combination.
And if I can,
combination is fine.
Mr. Kern, $270,000 is more than the original price. Chance, did you mean 170,000?
Yes, I apologize. 170,000.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Am I muted or unmuted?
Yay!
So, Mr. Fedorcha, you're on mute.
Okay. Now, I'm not even sure who's on first and who's on second anymore, but here's what I'm reading, and if I'm incorrect with the motion by Mr. Kern and seconded by Mrs. Heckman, is that we will purchase the water bottle bubblers at a maximum of 25 units, not to exceed 75,000. Is that what we said?
170,000.
Okay. That's the motion. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none. Madam Secretary.
Gail Hvac, yes. Mr. Keegan,
Yes.
Mr. Kern,
Yes.
Ms. Culp,
Yes.
Ms. Martineau,
Yes.
Mr. Disler, Mr. Disler,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Ms. Heckman,
Yes.
Mr. Fedorcha.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. And thank you, everyone. Good discussion. I really think we had a great discussion on this. And thank you very much. Anything else, Mr. Link, on?
Again, first, I'd like to say thank you, everyone, for that conversation and discussion. I would also like to thank Mr. Marangoni and Mr. Gunning for their input on this. And either Mr. Durr or myself will follow up in the next day or so to continue with the planning process.
Thank you very much for having us.
I want to thank you both also, and I also want to thank the McClure Company. You have been wonderful to work with, and I hope we have a long relationship.
This is Mrs. Martineau. Mr. Link, can you add to that to-do list to find out about the if McClure can find out about the filtration and the water situation for these new units?
Yeah, we did. We're doing a little bit of research as we're going through. We'll get more detail. We'll get more detail, but it does look like the filtration will help with odor, taste, and discoloration. But I'll get a little bit more detail.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Any other discussion on this discussion? And we'll move on then, Mr. Link. I believe.
What was the clarification? The filters won't help with color, taste, or odor. Is that what the filters won't help with?
They will.
Sorry, Don.
Yes, I'll get more detailed clarification, but from the documentation, it will help with odor, discoloration, and taste.
It will help. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
You can move on. Okay, Mr. Link, I believe you still have one item of the instructional model.
Sure. I just want to remind any public that are watching that our target date for a return to the hybrid model for our students continues to be January 19th, which is a week from tomorrow, that Tuesday. The Monday prior to that is a professional development day. And we'll be sending notification out to the community, I'm going to say by the end of the day, Wednesday, just reminding them of that. We continue to track any recent cases. I had to send some notices out over the weekend. We'll continue to track any recent cases between now and Wednesday. Our target's going to be to continue to shoot for the 19th to return to the hybrid model. I just ask everybody to please understand that once we return to the hybrid model, we are still bound to follow the requirements in the attestation statement, which means that any, given number of cases in any building could force a return to the fully remote model for that building for a short-term closure until we're able to disinfect and do contact tracing. And Mr. Fedorcha, that concludes my superintendent's report for this evening.
Any questions for Mr. Link? Any questions?
Yes, I have one question, Mr. Fedorcha.
Go ahead, Bob.
Mr. Link, in the Northampton or Lehigh counties, has there been any school districts that have decided, with the discussion that was in the news, of sending elementary students, specifically K-3 back to 5 days a week?
So the last time we met as a superintendent's group was the morning of when that information was released, and we have not reconvened since then. So I do not have an answer for your question as far as if any other districts are looking to bring their elementary children back. And I just, I'm just going to point out that initially that may have been misinterpreted by some people, that it wasn't it's not a recommendation to bring them back for 5 days a week. It's a recommendation to return them to the blended model for districts that have been in the fully remote model.
Yeah, I do understand that. However, I did a little research on myself, and I know that in Montgomery and Bucks County, I'm going to say it's probably 60%, 40% that the elementary students are in full time. And I just can't, I can't say it enough or emphasize enough that those are essential years of skill building. And if there's any chance that we could send our elementary students in earlier, I would be all for that. That's just my comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Bob
you,
Keegan. I have the same feelings as Bob Kern. I know I have a grandson in the Radnor School District, and he goes 5 days a week. So it's happening elsewhere, and if we can possibly bring our youngest kids back, it's critical, and I would support it.
Okay. It's something that is going to be looked at, I'm sure, in the coming week or so, or weeks, with the superintendents of the Valley, and we'll wait to hear from that. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Link. We had a executive session this evening for personnel, negotiations, and legal purposes. Moving on, I will move on to personnel. I will ask for a motion to approve the personnel items A through I.
Matt Green, so moves.
Do I have a second?
Bob Keegan, second.
Are there any questions on any of those items? Hearing none, Madam Secretary.
Mr. Keegan,
Yes.
Mr. Kern,
Yes.
Ms. Culp,
Yes.
Ms. Martineau,
Yes.
Mr. Disler,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Ms. Heckman,
Yes.
Ms. Hvac, yes. Mr. Fedorcha,
Yes,
motion passes.
thank you very much.
Thank you. I would just like to take a moment to recognize Miss Ellen Yenser this evening. She has been just so dedicated to our students and community. I know she's taught when we had a school in Waldorfport. She's taught, I believe, at the middle school, the high school, with really supporting some of our most at-risk students and students with special needs. And I want to thank her deeply for her service to our students and community and to her colleagues. I don't know if either Mrs. Dada or Mr. Velocity would like to comment on her service to the district as well. I know that we'll also be recognizing her during our commencement at the end of this year.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Lake. I'm sad to see her go. She has been a stalwart member of our family at Northern Lehigh. She's been in multiple buildings throughout her career, and she has done an outstanding job at the high school. And I know that her colleagues, the administration, and her students will miss her greatly.
Yes, and I would like to add, it's Mrs. Dodd, I'd like to add that she has done such a wonderful job with some of the most challenging students that we've had. She did a wonderful job with the union, being secretary of the union for many years, and I've worked very closely with her, and she will be greatly missed.
Thank you very much. Mr. Link, anything else? Okay. Okay. Madam Secretary, do we vote? We voted on that, correct? Okay. Moving on then to policy. I will accept a motion for the policy items, letter A, and it's 1 through 4. Do I have a motion?
Mrs. Martineau, so moved.
Do I have a second?
Second, Bob Kern.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Oh, okay, seeing none, Madam Secretary?
Mr. Kern,
Yes.
Ms. Culp,
Yes.
Ms. Martineau,
Yes.
Mr. Disler, Mr. Disler,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Ms. Heckman,
Yes.
Ms. Hvac, yes. Mr. Keegan,
Yes.
Mr. Fedorcha,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. Are there any conferences? Seeing none, moving on then, motion passes on that one, and we'll go on to curriculum instruction. Item A, do I have a motion to approve curriculum and instruction?
Mr. Green so moves.
Do I have a second? Do I have a second?
This is Robin Disler, second.
Okay. Any questions on the conference curriculum? I'm sorry, on the curriculum items? Hearing none, Madam Secretary?
Ms. Culp,
Yes.
Ms. Martineau,
Yes.
Mr. Disler,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Ms. Heckman, Ms. Heckman,
Sorry, I'm trying. Yes.
Ms. Hvac, yes. Mr. Keegan,
Yes.
Mr. Kern,
Yes.
Mr. Fedorcha,
Motion carries.
motion carries.
Moving on, is there any old business? Okay. Moving on to new business, I am not going to read all the whereas. This one is referring to the recognition of the Board of School Directors Recognition Month of January. We do not have any new board members this year. There was no election, so we are very happy to have all of our members present, and we want to thank them, and I want to thank them for being so wonderful and working together. We have done a great job this year, and I know we're going to continue, and I do want to thank you personally from that. And with that in mind, I will then open up to have a motion to approve the recognition of the school board directors for the month. Do I have a motion?
Being the rookie, I'll second. Thank you.
Okay, it's been moved in second. Any comments, questions? Madam Secretary.
Ms. Martineau,
Yes.
Mr. Disler,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Ms. Heckman,
Yes.
Ms. Hvac, yes. Mr. Keegan,
Yes.
Mr. Kern,
Yes, and thank you.
Ms. Culp,
Yes.
Mr. Fedorcha,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you very much. Moving on to the financial items, I will accept a motion to approve all the financial items A through G. A through G. Do I have a motion to approve?
Michelle Heckman, motion to.
Okay, do I have a second? Do I have a second?
Sure, Matt Green.
Michelle.
Okay, Matt Green. Okay, any questions? Any comments? Madam Secretary.
Mr. Disler,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Ms. Heckman,
Yes.
Ms. Hvac, yes. Mr. Keegan,
Yes.
Mr. Kern,
Yes.
Ms. Culp,
Yes.
Ms. Martineau,
Yes.
Mr. Fedorcha,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, is there any correspondence?
There is none.
Okay, thank you. In your pack, in your minutes, you have the minutes of the LTRIC, LCTI, and the Carbon Intermediate Unit. At this time, we are finished with the formal agenda. Mr. Hill, is there anyone who would like to address the board?
We do have a few questions. The first question is from Eric King. And this is in regards to the discussion that you were having about the 5 days a week with the younger students. And he asked, why do we need to play follow the leader? Why can't we just decide as a district ourselves? And that question came right after that discussion about the going 5 days a week and then having a superintendents of Lehigh County talking.
My remarks were not a characterization of following the leader. It was simply that, I was responding to a question at the last time has there been a discussion? And the answer is that no, there has not. The last time we met was prior to that announcement.
Okay. Mr. Hill? Anything
Yep, we have
else?
another question. This is from Richard Roberts. And Richard Roberts asked the question, if schools would go back to 5 days a week, would the 100% virtual students be able to stay virtual with their current teachers?
Mr. Link?
Sorry, that is something that we would consider. I don't think we're at the point where we could force families to return their children if they're not ready to do so. And in fact, I would expect quite an exodus of students from the district if we tried to do that. Currently, one of the things that we continue to try to work through is if the number of students in the building were to increase beyond what we're seeing in the hybrid model, can we maintain social distancing? I will point out that with those recommendations from PDE and Department of Health last week, that they continue to emphasize 6-foot social distancing if a district were to return to increase the capacity of students in the buildings.
So what I'm hearing then is that this would be looked at if and when that time comes, whether virtual will continue for those children who are in it now. Is that what I'm hearing, correct?
Yeah, my gut tells me that it's a strong possibility that we would have to continue with offering 5-day virtual.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hill?
This is Bob Keegan. I have an answer too, but the way I read what has been put out by the state is it's 6 foot isn't the exact number anymore. It's to the maximum extent possible, the distance. Or maximum extent feasible. And those are the words that are being used by the state, and that's very different than 6 feet. So we need to consider that once we do, if we do decide to go back, especially for our youngsters in the Peters, it's what's feasible. It doesn't have to be exactly 6 feet.
Right. Well, we would have to really see that and make sure that that is accurate on all ends. Mr. Hill?
Yes, we have one more question regarding sports. This is from Christina Pollard. And she would like to ask a question regarding winter sports. Why are we the only league in the area not allowing spectators to our home games? PIAA states we can have them. Which are the rules that you follow, especially since football was allowed?
Mr. Link, would that go to you or would that go to Mr. Geist?
Sure, I'll pass that to Mr. Geist for the league conversation. I know part of the logic between the difference between winter sports and football with spectators is that football, of course, is played in the outdoors, and what we know about the spread of the virus is much more likely to occur with larger numbers of people indoors, which is actually one of the reasons why we were just having a conversation about the bipolar ionization devices. Mr. Kern, as far as the league conversation, I'll let you address that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Link. In regards to the league, our sports medicine providers gave that recommendation, and the league voted on that, but it can be revisited. So there are a number of things that have changed since the fall. And as Mr. Link pointed out, that football and all of our other sports in the fall are played outside. We now have indoor sports, as the discussion with McClure and those kind of things. In addition to that, Mr. Fedorcha and Mr. Link had to sign an attestation page. In fact, every other school in our league had to sign that. If there are any cases attributed to anything in the stands, that would also contribute to our number. So those are things that we were concerned about as a league. So at this point, we are going to revisit it. And we said, if the numbers continue to go down, if we get new information, if things change, spectators will be allowed in. But at this point, for the best interest safety of all of our athletes, that's the recommendation that we have from our medical partners.
Thank you, Mr. Geist. Okay, that's Mr. Hill.
Yes, Mr. Fedorcha, that is all the questions we have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone who has questions. We always like to make sure that those questions are answered to our public. I believe we're at the end of our agenda, and I'm going to take a presidential thing and saying that we're not going to do roll call, Ms. Hvac, for the adjournment. I will ask right now, number one, wish everybody a healthy and stay well, and I'm going to say we will close with a motion at first. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Michelle Martineau, so moved.
Do I have a second?
Bob Kern, second.
Anyone objecting, please state your name. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks,
Good night.
everyone. Have a nice night.